When it comes to undertaking challenges, throughout the game your character will attempt to achieve different goals. A single challenge resolves a whole set of activities required to achieve a goal, rather than a particular action. So you won't be wasting too much time figuring out all sorts of things on a turn-by-turn basis. This is all about having a single encounter resolved by a single roll. This is quite speedy, quite elegant, factoring in the potential but also some difficulties and adversities that could affect your roll significantly. So even an entire combat could be resolved with a single challenge. So it is quite obvious that Defiant is not so much a tactical role-playing game, as it is a strategic role-playing game. Through specific challenges, the players follow the same routine, and based on the number of successes obtained during these challenges, the Game Master describes the outcome of the challenge to the players. Now, when it comes to the situation itself, not every situation in the game calls for a challenge. Most of the things are going to be handled through roleplay. Challenges are not supposed to feel like a burden, they should feel like an exciting opportunity to further your character's plans or agendas, or to end up with defeat or complications. And this minimal way of handling roles makes a lot of sense with the theme. The characters are defiant royalty, of great power and great resources. Most of the things they will be able to accomplish with little to no effort. They are quite strong, they wield powerful magical abilities. They can manifest almost anything that they want according to their origins and their house. And if they cannot do something because they are busy with other things, they can give orders to their subjects so that they can accomplish what the player characters desire. However, when it comes to a challenge that could decide something very important for the livelihood of the character or the district, then you need to make a roll. And all of the challenges are quite simple, they always follow the same process. You make a declaration what you wish to attempt with your abilities, with your potential. Then you factor in that potential. As I mentioned earlier, this is a system where you have dice that scale up according to your potential, formed by traits determined by character creation, by the situation at hand. These would be positive things that add to your potential, but then the adversary's archetype, in case it is a contested role or a contested situation, or the adversary's affliction or your own affliction could further modify this. So for example, maybe you are trying to sneak past someone, and the guard has the vigilant sentinel archetype. You need to lower your potential by 2 because the character, the non-player character, is vigilant and sentinel, so your role is going to be quite difficult. But if you are trying to sneak past a careful warrior, it will only lower your potential by 1 because the careful trait is relevant. Warrior, it is not so much when it comes to spotting someone that is being stealthy. So it's all about making sense of those afflictions and the positive potential. You also have information how to use courtiers in these challenges, obtaining the help of your spouse. This is no easy feat. Whenever you want to increase your potential by using the spouse's archetype, you increase your potential by 1 or 2 steps, but you also mark a minor affliction. This could come as a result of a negative interaction with your spouse. Maybe the spouse becomes irritated, or the spouse ends up in some sort of danger. So it's important to keep in mind that the non-player characters that you are asking for help will also get involved into this situation. You could even ask for help from the other player characters, but depending on the outcome, they could also be affected from your challenge, and you may end up owing them a lot if it's a competitive sort of experience. So it's all about upgrading your dice pool, or perhaps downgrading it because of different difficulties that you face. So remember, normally you roll 3 6-sided dice that could be upgraded to 8-sided dice or even 10-sided dice, and you could even get an extra dice. But when it comes to the trouble that you can get, if you rolled at least a single 1 on any of the dice, you need to progress the trouble track on your character sheet by 1. We will talk more about that later on. To get a success, remember you need 5 or more, regardless of the number of sides of the dice that you roll. Now you could be thinking, what if the player character doesn't have enough positive traits to get good potential during a check, and the thing that he's facing, the enemies, the situation, actually cause a negative potential. So for example, during a social situation, maybe your character is just charming and that's it, but your adversaries are intelligent, they have more resources than you, and perhaps they have the favor of the host of the party, then you could end up with a negative potential. If you end up with a potential being lower than 0, you still roll 3 6-sided dice. However, afterwards, you need to deduct 1 from the highest die value for each negative point of potential. This will significantly impact your chance of success. But of course, you have shards that you can spend before the roll to add a single 8-sided die to the basic dice pool. This means you will be getting 4 dice. Additionally, you can also ignore all ones rolled and you don't have to mark trouble. So it's actually a very simple process. It's just somewhat complex to describe because of the different implications, the number of successes, the way that potential is established depending on the character's traits, the additional help they get, character afflictions, the adversary's merits. But with this handy chart right here, it's very easy to make sense of it all. Then we have information on the outcome determined by the number of successes rolled. You already know the results that you can get during the pilot episode. But the pilot episode is just the first of a number of adventures that will be run through an entire series. So now you have information on what happens during regular episodes. If you obtain no successes, the characters are at the mercy of the Game Master. The Game Master will create all sorts of problems and complications based on this outcome. When it comes to a single success, the character manages to achieve his or her goal. However, in the case of this single success, they are probably not sure whether it was worth it or not. They could have paid a heavy price. When it comes to 2 successes, this is an almost perfect outcome. The character achieves the desired goal, and it would be a complete victory if it wasn't for that one thing, one small sacrifice, one wrong choice. When you get 3 successes, the character manages to actually outdo anything that he or she wants to accomplish. This is pretty much exactly what the character wanted. But when you get 4 successes, this is an extraordinary outcome. To obtain this result, the character needs to spend a shard before the challenge and get really lucky. So the character is completely successful in any activity, but also obtains something remarkable, something in great favor of the character. If the Game Master wishes, they could also grant 1 or 2 progress steps to distribute among the character's endeavors. We will talk more about these long-term plans later on. Then we have details on the conclusion. After the roll has been made, the Game Master narrates the challenge, considering the traits used by the character, the number of successes, and there are 3 options here. Maybe there is a price to pay. The Game Master leaves nothing to the player and simply states that something happened with some potential troubles, or perhaps even additional rewards, it depends. You also have the choice. This sort of outcome is when the Game Master decides it will be more interesting to let the player choose between 2 options. This is quite in favor on the characters having more agency or authorship upon their lives. This is obviously more tied to extraordinary results during challenges. You also have the condition. This is similar to the prize outcome, but the player is still in control. The Game Master informs the player that they will succeed if they agree to a condition. If they don't, the challenge is simply off. They tried and decided that it's not worth it. You also have information on impossible challenges, because theoretically, the player can declare any action for their character, no matter how unlikely it is to succeed. But no matter the reason, when the Game Master declares that some challenge is impossible, they have to explain their decision and present the player with at least 1 option. They list the available options here. You have the alternative challenge. This is when the Game Master proposes to change the stipulation of the challenge to make it possible to overcome. Maybe the Game Master requires something additionally. When the odds are impossible, the Game Master may propose fulfilling additional requirements in order to stand any chance of achieving the goal. Or maybe you need to set up an endeavor. If the potential challenge seems too complicated and too long to accomplish with a single attempt, it could be a good idea to turn this challenge into an endeavor instead. This is a long-term plan that could span several sessions. And to further clarify how different challenges could go about or could have different outcomes in different episodes, you have a challenge guide. These are basically examples on how you can set up potential situations and different ways of tackling or solving those problems, those issues. So you have all sorts of situations related to politics, to social gatherings, to battle, to investigation, to conflict in general. So you'll never have any questions or doubts as to how to use the challenges during your sessions. This is a great feature to this rulebook in my opinion. These are some of the more detailed examples that you will find in a tabletop role-playing game, especially those focused on storytelling. Next, we have information on endeavors. These are quite different from normal challenges. Endeavors are basically a more complex version of challenges, to the point that you could say that they are a series of challenges that you take through different episodes. That is, it's going to take you several episodes to take an endeavor to its fulfillment or its goal. To undertake an endeavor, you need to start it when declaring some sort of long-term goal or plan. You need to hold the narrative for a moment to properly set up an endeavor. You need to clarify the goal of the endeavor. You need to set up the progress track. This is going to go forward as you are successful in different challenges throughout the series. So depending on the action that you take to start the endeavor, you have an opening challenge. You have conditions that you need to fulfill for that endeavor to happen. And then you make progress with your endeavor, marking steps through dedicated challenges, marking steps through outcomes, and marking them through standing. That is, each character has 2 standing attributes, reflecting their relations with the princeps and their house. They can use the position and merits they gain to progress the endeavors, which may often prove to be the fastest way to their completion. You can also mark these steps through personal affairs and personal challenges. You can also maintain multiple endeavors. However, this is quite difficult because there are some setback mechanics that we will talk about later on, and they actually present obstacles to the endeavors, to their progress. So endeavors that do not progress fast enough will eventually fail. And to finalize an endeavor, you need to carry out a final challenge. You could also find ways to rush an endeavor, but this is considerably more difficult. That is, each challenge is going to be harder to complete. Now, when it comes to the setbacks, if you linger too long, others may foil your plans, or the circumstances themselves may change, rendering it undoable. The endeavor is no longer possible. In Defiant, this is represented by a setback mechanic. So at the beginning of each episode, you need to mark a setback on the progress track of all endeavors you are undertaking, so each endeavor feels like a race against time. That's why it's not feasible or not practical to have too many endeavors going at once. Every time a character scores less than 3 successes in a challenge, the game master may actually decide to mark a setback on a progress track that seems most appropriate, additionally increasing the chance of the endeavor failing. So you need to deal with the setback, and some endeavors simply fall way behind too fast, too early. Sometimes it's better to sacrifice them so that other endeavors may keep on moving forward. Of course, you can also help other characters with their endeavors. You can also receive help from other player characters or non-player characters, or you could even sabotage other endeavors, or they could be sabotaging your own plans. And luckily, you have a handy chart clarifying the entire process. You also have many examples for endeavors. Maybe you want to have a divide and conquer sort of strategy, antagonizing 2 forces. Or maybe you want to play as the matchmaker, creating alliances between 2 characters, or 2 forces even. Maybe you can obtain some hidden knowledge. Maybe you can establish some sort of place to use as a home base, or to further your plans in taking control of perhaps an entire district. So maybe you are establishing clubs or community centers. The sky's the limit. You can have all sorts of endeavors and make them progress, as long as you are successful at the challenges and as long as those endeavors do not fall behind because of the setbacks. So just to further clarify things, a challenge could be a confrontation between 2 player characters, physical confrontations or social confrontations. You could also try to find some data immediately, or maybe you want to explore some place, maybe you want to enter a forbidden place of the district, maybe you want to look for a particular player character or non-player character that has been lost in some way. And endeavors will take a lot more time and several challenges to complete or to carry out. So while challenges complete immediate tasks, endeavors fulfill your desires for your long-term vision of the series. Now when it comes to standing, the actions of the characters do not go unnoticed. Whenever they break the domains or provinces' rules, there's a chance of backlash and problems from the authority or the principality. And it's also the other way around. You can also gain favor because of your different actions and the things that you do for other player characters or non-player characters. The standing mechanics are used to illustrate the goodwill and respect of the royals towards each other within the province and within the character's own bloodlines or house due to their fame and merit. Whenever a character improves their relationship with their house or manages to impress the matriarch or the patriarch, they gain house standing. So it all depends on what you are trying to do in favor of the province or of the house. The standing can be spent on progressing endeavors, illustrating the character using the support of either the members of the bloodline or the province itself to further their own agendas. You can acquire standing in two ways, though some additional rules could give the character more options to do so. You answer the standing questions. At the end of every episode, you need to answer a set of questions on behalf of your character, and each positive answer results in gaining standing with either the province or the bloodline. These questions are: have you done right by your province and princeps? Have you stayed true to your bloodline's creed and ideals? Have you fulfilled your royal duties to the full extent? Have you done anything notable to support principles or commandments? Have your actions gained popularity and fame throughout the domain? You can also gain special merit. Apart from answering the standing questions at the end of each episode, the characters can also gain points by helping the province or the house in any way that is allowed by the context of the adventure, and it has to make sense with what the game master and the other players have done while you're trying to help the province or the house, or perhaps before or after. So every time your character does a favor for example, the princeps or princesa, or saves them from trouble, they should mark a point of province standing that you can use to further your endeavors. And you can actually carry out special actions because of your standing to progress your endeavor in a more direct way. For example, you can ask for a private audience with the princeps or princesa, or you could call for aid. If there is a member of your house present in the scene, you can spend a point of house standing to ask them for immediate help. So depending on your province standing or your house standing, you can obtain favors. Province being linked to the princeps or princesa, and house to any member of the house or the matriarch or the patriarch. You also have details on afflictions. In Defiant, there are no hit points, no quantifiable way of measuring your health or anything that puts your life in danger. No health stat that will represent the character's well-being. The state of each player character is portrayed using afflictions. Short descriptions of alignment, distress, and weariness. So maybe you are wounded, this could affect your performance in physical battle, or maybe you are exhausted, this could affect pretty much everything, or maybe you got some really nasty scar or some sort of mark on your face, so this could affect your interactions with non-player characters in social situations. There are basically three types of afflictions. You have minor afflictions, major afflictions, and severe afflictions. Minor afflictions will put the character at a disadvantage. They will need to deduct 1 from their potential, lowering their dice pool. Major afflictions are even more troublesome, lowering your potential by 2. And severe afflictions, which are the most serious of them all, they lower your potential by 3. So for example, maybe your character is just bruised, that would be a minor affliction. Maybe your character has some sort of terrible wound, that would be a major affliction. Or maybe your character is barely sane, that could be a severe affliction. And how do you gain these afflictions? There are a couple of ways in which this could happen. Maybe it happens as an outcome of a challenge, or as the result of a declaration, or through special rules. So anything that makes sense with the rules but also with the story will result in an affliction. And to remove them, you could, for example, engage in appropriate conduct if it's related to your personality, your appearance, or maybe after the episode, you regenerate. After all, you are a divine, supernatural being. With enough time, you can regenerate perhaps even missing limbs. And there could also be some special rules that speed up the healing process. For example, carrying out a personal affair or a challenge, it could allow you to heal yourself faster. And another important thing is that because the player characters are lords and ladies, they need to also look out for the afflictions that their courtiers could suffer. They are also in charge of their court. They must protect their court. Now, Defiant is not a game where the characters are constantly dying, because they are deities, they are angels, they are quite demonic, they are draconic. They are very resilient or resistant to death. When death actually happens, it is because of some very violent, perhaps cataclysmic event. But they are still quite resistant because, for example, maybe they have 3 minor afflictions, then that would mean they are simply incapable of participating in certain challenges. But if they get perhaps 3 severe afflictions, they could pretty much die. It also depends on the context of the situation. You can actually use some afflictions as an advantage. It could be reasonable, for example, if a character wants to cause pity and he arrives quite wounded or distressed. Sometimes they gain the favor of those that feel protective of the character. And in some other cases, maybe you have a really nasty scar all over your face or your entire body, maybe because of some incredible attack, like they threw some lava at you or they cut you with some sort of a supernaturally empowered sword. Maybe if you go to a place where battle and wounds gained in battle are honored or considered marks of distinction, then that could work in your favor. So you need to be creative and intelligent on how to use those afflictions to your advantage. Now let's talk about shards. Members of the Defiant royalty share a special connection with the Sephira. Their passions fuel the sacred sigil and make it stronger, so it can withstand the powers of the apocalypse. So in return, the Sephira blesses those nobles, those Defiant royalty, elevating them above lesser Defiant. So player characters have this unique bond represented by the shards mechanic. Each character starts with 10 shards, representing the goodwill of the Sephira. Players can spend shards to gain different advantages. However, as the player characters spend their shards, their connection with the Sephira starts to weaken. Now here are some ways in which you can spend your shards. You can improve dice pools. You can ask theme questions, because each character has a total of 9 questions, 3 from each theme when you create the character. They can ask anytime during the game, as long as they spend a shard. The questions are supposed to potentially change the situation, so you must ask carefully. You can also activate special rules. You can spend shards to activate particular rules concerning a character that come from either their themes or origins. For example, an angel character could spend a shard to switch between their angelic callings, and the socialite might spend a shard to introduce a person or a new rule to an ongoing party. You can also regain shards, of course. Characters of each origin have different ways to recover them. However, in order to regain your shards, the Sephira demands something in return. Until certain conditions are met, the characters cannot replenish their shard pool again. For example, the angels. They used to exist to serve. They had a higher purpose and a clear path ahead of them. They may have overthrown their leaders, but they still need guidance. So an angel character can choose to pray to the Sephira anytime during play and ask, "How can I atone for my sins?" And this automatically replenishes the shard of the angel character. However, they are also given a penance, which they need to fulfill before they can pray to Sephira again. This is great for storytelling opportunities. You never know what the game director or game master is going to throw at the player characters in order for them to recover those precious shards. In the case of the Deva, their connection with mortal followers is crucial to their existence. They gain power through being worshipped. That's basically it. So to replenish the shard pool, the Deva need to focus on their mortal followers and answer the question, what do I need them to become? However, followers are far from perfect. They may have their hesitations about what is needed from them, or can prove unable to fully comprehend what they should do. So it is up to the Deva to guide them. When it comes to the Infernals, when an Infernal is sentenced to hell, the overlords extract their true names, carved into their souls. Using someone's true name enables them to compel their victims to do their bidding. However, because the Infernals have escaped to the mortal world and joined the Defiant, they now keep their true names hidden. They take on new identities. However, some Defiant or even mortals can become aware of an Infernal's true name. They could call it in time of need or out of whim to make the Defiant do something that goes against that particular Defiant's will, perhaps. So whenever an Infernal wishes to replenish their shard pool, they do so automatically, but the released energy makes someone who's already aware of their true name think of that character, and either voluntarily or unwittingly they summon them. When it comes to the Leviathans, these ancient beasts used to only crave death and destruction. So whenever a Leviathan wants to replenish their shard pool, they need to search their soul for something they crave more than utter destruction. Then they need to focus exclusively on this desire and pursue it to the best of their abilities. Now when it comes to non-player characters and shards, they do not use shards. All Defiant royalty share the bond with the Sephira, and everyone needs to cultivate it. So you should assume that all angelic lords and ladies pray for guidance, all Deva aristocracy mold their followers, etc. So there are no hard rules for this. The non-player character simply cannot gain or use shards. So the connection of the non-player characters with the Sephira should be role-played, or used according to the game master's better judgment, focusing on the episode or the entire series. Now let's talk about personal themes. When you create a character, everyone chooses 3 personal themes as said previously in the character creation section. They are the basic building blocks used to flesh out the characters. So you must keep in mind that character traits, theme questions, special rules are obtained through these personal themes, but they come with their own unique troubles. A specific problem that may occasionally arise, compelling the character to deal with the fallout of said problem. And for that mechanic you have the trouble track. From time to time, bad things will happen to the player characters due to their backgrounds or events from their past, rather than as a result of something that has just happened. Each character has 3 different troubles, one from each personal theme, and a 4-box long trouble track on their character sheet. Whenever they score at least a single one during a challenge roll, the player marks one of these boxes. And whenever there's at least a single box marked, the player may activate the character's trouble. If all boxes are marked, the trouble activates automatically in its most severe form. Now you want to activate trouble to erase those troublesome marks, so to speak. As long as at least one box in the trouble track is marked, the player can activate one of the character's troubles at any time. If they do, they can choose any of these troubles and narrate the situation. Other players and the game master may ask for additional details and share their doubts if they feel the scene is not within the chosen trouble's scope. So this could result in one or more challenges. And regardless of the resolution of the situation, whenever the trouble is activated, the character gets an affliction before they have a chance to act. A single marked box results in the character receiving a minor affliction. And the more afflictions you accumulate, this could escalate into a major affliction or even severe affliction. It could also result in the player character's death. Now, when it comes to personal affairs, each Defiant episode begins with the character's personal affair as a focus. Before you jump into current action, you start by discussing what your characters have been up to recently. During this phase, every player chooses one personal affair for their character to represent their actions in recent days and get a bonus. The Game Master will ask each player about their chosen action to establish what the character was doing exactly. As always, the responding player's ideas are very important, but everyone else is free to chip in with their own input as long as it makes sense with the episode. So your personal affairs, what your character has been doing so far, could give you the following benefits. You could gain 2 points of either province or house standing. You could increase the potential of the next court challenge by 3. You could remove all afflictions from your character. You could remove all afflictions from your courtiers. You could create a new facility in your holding. You could change the adjectives of any number of your facilities. You could start an endeavor of your choice with a +3 potential modifier. You could advance an endeavor by 3 steps. You could change your unique trait. So there are many things you can do with this. Now, when it comes to personal challenges during the episode, there is another moment of downtime, when the character can take care of their personal life again. However, during this time, they do not get the bonus automatically. They choose their preferred option the same way they did during the personal affairs phase, but they need to take a challenge. And if they score no successes, this means they do not get the bonus and something bad happens instead. Now, when it comes to court challenges, to be a Defiant Royal is to rule over a court of your own, of course. So there's no wonder that events on each character's courts play a very important part in each episode. Every court challenge follows the same routine. The Game Master starts by asking a few questions about recent events at the court, potential problems, changes, and the like, and the player can answer in any way that they choose. No roll is required for that. However, they need to reply from the player character's perspective. And after all of those court-related questions have been answered, characters take on challenges to determine how good or bad the situation actually turns out to be concerning the court. Depending on the number of players, you either talk about the outcome or you play out a full scene at the court to illustrate it. Now, when it comes to answering the court questions, remember that it's actually the character, not the player, that answers the questions. You need to keep this point of view or perspective in mind. If the Game Master or other players feel they want to learn more about the situation or something is unclear, they could ask follow-up questions to understand the situation better. They could ask, what's the main issue you've been dealing within your court lately? Have you noticed the court's afflictions affecting life in your holding? Are you aware of any courtiers causing problems in your court? Have you implemented any new rules or customs in your court? Is there anyone or anything that you're especially interested in right now? Now, putting that aside, you can also establish the potential. After the questions have been answered, it is now time for the character to take the challenge as per standard rules. The goal of the challenge is to check how the court has been faring recently. So you establish the potential through personal traits. You also take into consideration characters' afflictions, holding facilities, court traits, court afflictions, shards, courtier archetypes, and then you make the roll. You interpret the outcome based on successes. If you get 0 successes, it could be a total disaster. Maybe you obtain just 1 success and you get a problematic situation, not as bad as a total disaster, of course. If you get 2 successes, it's a very normal day-to-day situation in the world of Defiant. If you obtain 3 successes, it turns out for the better. And so the Game Master interprets this result and chooses the consequences, be it a positive or negative chain of events. Now let's talk about character advancement. Like I said earlier, this role-playing game is very different from other RPGs in the way the characters move forward. They do not obtain experience points or magical items. The way that they upgrade themselves, it's not through attributes and abilities. It's more related to relationships and the personal and political goals that they achieve. Their traits and special abilities remain the same throughout most of the game. They advance through personal affairs, endeavors, and challenges, seeing their plans come to fruition. There's also seasonal advancement after a season finale of the series, but before the new season starts in the series, the players have the option to upgrade their characters, improving their potential. Every player can choose one of 2 options, which are theme mastery. That is, you can choose one of the character's themes that you feel played the most important role throughout the last season and modify it to increase the character's potential. And also theme change. You start by choosing a theme that either played the least important part in the last season or became obsolete due to the character's personal growth and development. So everything has to make sense with the story, with the alliances, with the ways that you frustrate your enemy's plans, thwart any threat against you, and you gain the favor of the princeps or princessa in the process, hopefully.